Hello, everybody. With everything that's been going on concerning the virus outbreak, there's a quote from Blackbeard that comes to mind throughout all of this. And you wouldn't expect that he would say it, but he does. He says it in Impel Down after Shiryu saves him and his crew from the poison, Magellan's poison. It's kind of funny because Shiryu is upset about them living so dangerously. And he says, if I hadn't shown up with the antidote, you guys would be dead already. And Blackbeard just laughs it off. Whether we live or die isn't up to us, it's up to God. And those who live in fear will lose. So the best we can do is to live in the moment. In other words, worrying doesn't help much of anything. This week we got a reminder that Oda is still a normal, living, breathing human being because he got sick, and so the chapter got delayed, it got postponed to next week. Thankfully, though, Oda's health is a lot better. He's fully recovered from what I understand. Reading this tweet, that's what it says. And so we will be getting the chapter next week. It's just that this week we got a break, an unexpected one, because Oda is a human being. And I know that sounds kind of sarcastic, the way that I'm saying it, but the reason for why I'm doing so is because I think sometimes there's enough distance between him as the author and us as the audience that I think it's easy to forget that he's just a normal human being and that he needs to take care of his health and that he gets sick. That being said, today we're going to be talking about one of my favorite female characters in the series, second favorite female character under Robin, Jewelry Bonnie. So I'm going to start talking about her character, and then I'm going to use her as a springboard to branch off to other narrative threads and how I think they're going to be connecting sooner rather than later.
So, if you look at this picture here with the 11 supernova minus Luffy and Zoro, you'll notice that there are currently two supernova that are not involved in the current story arc in Wano. Well, actually, Capone isn't in Wano either, but he already had his screen time, and we learned more about him back in Whole Cake Island, so he already had his time to shine, and we have a cover story with him. But what I'm trying to say is that Bonnie and Urouge are the two supernova that we know the least about. And since they're not currently in the arc, that means that Oda has plans to reveal more about them later. And the longer he waits, I happen to think that the more important their role is going to be in the story. Because One Piece is nearing its end. So I thought it would be a good idea to start by going through Bonnie's history a bit. During Marineford, if you remember, Bonnie was very emotional. She was very sad. And we found out during Reverie that it was because she was watching Kuma on the screen, essentially being a zombie and no longer having his own personality. Now, after we see her crying, Bonnie orders her crew to set sail for the New World, saying that it's all his fault. And according to Doflamingo, the person responsible for removing Kuma's personality was Dr. Vegapunk. So I'm pretty sure that Bonnie was aiming to track down Vegapunk to make him pay for what he did to Kuma. However, she gets intercepted by Blackbeard, and Blackbeard mentions that Bonnie is too weak to join his crew, and that he's actually surprised that her bounty is as high as it is, which is 140 million. 140 million pre-time skip. That's more than Zoro was worth pre-time skip, and it's also more than Robin's current bounty. Why is that? Also, when Akainu finds her tied up, he says that knowing that Bonnie escaped made his blood freeze. Think about that for a second. The guy who is made out of magma is saying that Bonnie escaping the government made his blood freeze. And so some fans have speculated that this is because Bonnie has been forced to use her devil fruit power on the Gorosei and maybe even Emu to de-age them over time so that they don't die, a la Rapunzel, where she's being held captive just because of her powers that can restore youth. And every time we've seen Bonnie post-time skip, she's actually always been in hiding, which lets us know that the government is still actively looking for her. Now here's the thing, if the world government is so afraid of Bonnie running away because they need her powers, I think an obvious solution for them would be to kill Bonnie, to have her devil fruit be reborn, and then have someone who's already subservient to them get the power, so that they could use it on them over and over whenever they want. So why hasn't the world government done this? Why hasn't Bonnie been killed off for her fruit? Well, I believe that the reason behind that can go back to Kuma. See, a while back, Oda drew this picture of Kuma as a kid, and after I did some searching, I found out that the picture was inspired by this depiction of a famous Japanese agricultural leader and philosopher named Ninomiya Sontoku. And Sontoku was born poor, but then achieved wealth and rulership. And at one point during his administration, famine struck the place that he was ruling. And so what Sontoku proposed in the middle of this crisis was for him and the other bureaucrats to open up the rice barns that they owned in order to feed the poor. And at first, the bureaucrats didn't like the idea, but eventually Sontoku got his way. So he ended up saving a lot of people that way. And so I remembered that Oda had drawn Bonney as a kid as well. And as you can tell from her appearance here, she seems to be a victim of poverty and famine.
So it could be that at one point, Kuma saved Bonney from starvation by giving her some food, and that's how the relationship began. And then later on, once the world government found out about Bonney's devil fruit, they were like, yeah, we need to use you because of your fruit. And then maybe they thought, but you're not essential, so you can use it, but then we can kill you and give that fruit to somebody else. And so Kuma was like, no, please don't do that. Please don't kill her because of her power. Let's make a deal here. If you don't kill her, if you spare her life, I will become your servant. Which is funny because Anne Bonney, the real Irish pirate, who is actually the real life inspiration behind Bonney's name, was actually spared in real life. In real life, she was about to be executed, and they found out she was pregnant, so she was spared. Also, Kuma started off as a revolutionary, and even Ivankov says that Kuma hates the world government, so I don't see another reason for why he would cooperate with them unless it's for the sake of somebody else. And then also, Doflamingo said during Marineford that Kuma had a deal with the world government, and that's why he ended up losing his personality. So I think that him sticking his neck out for Bonney, plus helping the Straw Hats escape from Subodi Archipelago, that was the thing that did it. And they were like, yep, I'm sorry, you gotta go. We gotta experiment on you, and you have to become a mindless cyborg. You probably already heard me say this, but in terms of the arcs that I think are left for the story, the only ones I see happening after Wano are an Elbaf arc, a Laugh Tale arc, and a Final War arc, with a mini Vegapunk arc sandwiched in between any of the previous ones that I just mentioned. And if it is going to be an arc, I don't expect the Vegapunk arc to be very long. I expect it to be the length of something like Reverie or Zoe. And once we get there, I think that's when Vegapunk is going to give us like the full exposition about what the deal was with Kuma.
And so when it comes to connecting narrative threads leading towards the finale, I think we're at a place where Oda has dropped several hints about Vegapunk coming into the story relatively soon. For one, we know that Smoker and Tashiki were on their way to his lab in order for him to treat the children that Caesar Clown was trying to turn into giants. And so that whole thing can connect to Elbaf and Big Mom, since it was Big Mom who was paying Caesar to come up with the giantification formula. And so once we meet Vegapunk, he can hype up the giants even more by explaining why it's impossible to turn people into giants without any serious side effects. Because even he couldn't do it. It's been confirmed that even Vegapunk can't do that. So what is it about the giant gene, the giant race, that is so special that it can't be replicated? And we know that Caesar, Judge, and Vegapunk used to work together. They were colleagues. So I definitely think we'll get a scene with all three scientists at one point arguing about ethics. And Vegapunk has been described as being sort of a weirdo. So I definitely expect his appearance and personality to be pretty outrageous and fun. But beyond that, the most important thing about Vegapunk being introduced into the story is that the closer we are to Vegapunk, the closer we are to finding out the truth about devil fruits. And this is because in an SBS, Oda was asked about the Gomu Gomu no Mi, Luffy's devil fruit, and he said this. He said, "For more detail, you'll just have to wait for a certain professor to make his appearance in the story and explain exactly what the devil fruits really are." Eventually.
It's interesting that he's saying it in a way that kind of makes you feel like, wait, so they're not just fruits that grant people power and negate their ability to swim? There's something else behind these fruits, maybe something spiritual, maybe something ancient, something that you can trace back to the origin of time. Ever since Reverie, I've been thinking about the role of the sea when it comes to devil fruit powers. Because if you're a devil fruit eater, it's like the sea is your kryptonite, right? Because you can't swim and you sink to the bottom of it. And so I've been thinking about this since Reverie because emu, if you spell emu backwards, it spells out umi, which means sea in Japanese. So I wonder if at one point emu put a curse on these fruits so that he or she could be the only ruler of the sea. But going back to Vegapunk, Orochi at one point during Wano asked ZP0 to bring Dr. Vegapunk to Wano as payment for the trade deals that he was conducting, right? So, and CP0 was like, no, that's too much of a big request. But I think that request has to have some payoff. Otherwise, why even have it there? Like, why even have Orochi mention that, right? That Vegapunk, could be brought to Wano. So I think what could happen is that after everything is said and done with Kaido, maybe after the arc, we just see like a Navy ship arrive in Wano and it's carrying Dr. Vegapunk. Now, how this can connect back to Bonney is that if you remember, last time we saw Bonney, she was at the Reverie. She was trying to infiltrate the Reverie and she was trying to get to Kuma. And I don't think that she was just trying to get to Kuma to say hi. I think she was trying to get him out of there to try and find a way to save him. Same thing with Sabo. I think Sabo kind of wanted the same thing, to save Kuma. And I think what they could do is that if they manage to escape Marijoa, if they manage to escape, that the Holy Land, they can take Kuma to Vegapunk and have him restore his personality. In fact, after that scene pre-time skip with Akainu, Akainu takes Bonney back to the world government and she manages to escape once again. So I think like she probably knows something about, the ins and outs of Marijoa, how to get in and out of there. And if it turns out that Sabo has been arrested by the world government, I think Bonney can be a very helpful ally and help him escape. And not only him, but Bonnie's crew was caught after that confrontation with Blackbeard, and Akainu took Bonney and her crew away, and she was able to escape, but not her crew.
So in the end, it could all go back to her wanting to find Vegapunk and have him possibly revert Kuma back to his original self. Now, in this scene where Bonney says that she wants to go to the New World, what I found surprising is that if you look at that scene, each of the supernovas says something that foreshadows something about their future role in the story, something about their character. And so I'll give you some examples. Like Capone talks about how Whitebeard's territories will fall, and I think this foreshadows him working under Big Mom, since we know that Fishman Island was Whitebeard's territory, but was later claimed by Big Mom. And then we have Drake, who says that the Navy has to change, which foreshadows him being a member of the secret Zord organization within the Marines. And then we have Apu, who's kind of projecting his own motives onto Law, because he doesn't understand, he doesn't believe that Law would save Luffy just because he's a good guy. And so I think this definitely foreshadows Apu being a traitor and him backstabbing Kid and Hawkins in favor of Kaido. Now Hawkins is just kind of busy doing calculations about Luffy's survival rate in that scene, but what I found interesting was that both Kid and Urouge kind of hype Blackbeard up. Like Kid says, oh, that Blackbeard is quite a guy. So I'm not really sure where that's gonna lead Kid, thinking that Blackbeard is quite a guy. And then Rouge says that Blackbeard is key and that it's important to keep an eye on him. So it could be that Rouge re-enters the main storyline around the same time that Teach does. I wonder if it'll have anything to do with Rouge being a Birkin and then Blackbeard being one of the only people who believed that Skypiea was real, that Skypiea existed. He actually told Luffy before he went there that it was real. So maybe Rouge will show up to finally give us more info about his race and explain the ancient wall paintings that Enru found in the moon.
Speaking of that, I read a post a while back about the patterns of the wings of those three winged races appearing on the cover of Kuma's Bible. So if you look at Kuma's Bible, at one point he's carrying a version that has the wings on the corners. I don't really see it here personally. If you compare the two, I think the patterns on the Bible don't really match the ones in the cave. But let me know what you think. And regardless, though, I think it's interesting that Kuma had or could have had this book about the origin of the species in the One Piece world, and that it could talk about the people that came from the sky or the people that came from the moon. I also think it's interesting that there are certain biblical references or names that hold biblical significance in the world of One Piece that we don't know too much about. Like, for example, we know about the Eve tree. We know that its base is in Fishman Island and that it gives Fishman Island its light. You know, it illuminates the sea forest, which, by the way, there were 2 poneglyphs in the sea forest. But we don't know what the top of the Eve tree looks like. We know about the Adam tree and how the wood is special and how that's the wood that Sunny is made out of. But we don't know where the Adam tree is. It's supposed to be this legend. Noah, for example, in Fishman Island, Noah's Ark. We know that it's super important and that it's going to play a role, but we don't know what the true purpose of the Noah is. Also, devil fruits, right? I mean, it's like there's a lot of references to the book of Genesis that we know very little about, but we're getting closer and closer to figuring out what it all means and how it all connects. Because in One Piece, everything's going to connect in the end, and I think it's going to blow us away. And the people that, at least, you know, during the past couple of days, the people that got me to think about these end game sort of connections were Bonney and Vegapunk. So please let me know your thoughts about the points that I brought up in this video down in the comments section. Thank you so much for watching. If you liked the video, you know what to do. Subscribe for One Piece reviews and analysis. Hope you enjoy them. Take care, take the right precautions, but don't worry excessively. I'll catch you guys later. Bye.